Hello, this is Michael Robertson, Regional Environmental Health Specialist with the Food Protection and Facilities Branch. This presentation is designed to give you an overview of the rules governing the sanitation of local confinement facilities. This presentation includes information about the rules and how to document violations on the inspection form. For this presentation, please make sure to have a copy of the rules governing the sanitation of local confinement facilities 15A, NCAC 18A 1500, which can be downloaded from the North Carolina Division of Environmental Health website, and also have a copy of inspection form number 1268, which is used to grade and inspect local confinement facilities. Let's start off by talking about definitions listed in 1501. A local confinement facility includes any county or municipal confinement facility, local lockup, regional or district confinement facility, any detention facility for children or adults, any county or municipal workhouse or house of correction, and any other confinement facility operated by any local government for confinement of persons awaiting trial or sentences. Please keep in mind that state-owned facilities are regulated by the Regional Environmental Health Specialist with the Institution section. In North Carolina, local confinement facilities are licensed by the North Carolina Division of Health Service Regulation, a division of NCDHHS. Environmental Health does not issue a permit to these facilities, so keep in mind, no permit action can be taken. In Rule 1502, Approval of Plans, plans and specifications for new construction or major modifications shall be submitted to the Health Department for approval. Once the plan review has been completed, make sure to issue a letter of plan approval or denial. If denied, list the non-compliant items and reference the rules involved. We always recommend working with the operator, licensing agency, building inspections, and the fire marshal to ensure that all requirements have been addressed. Under Rule 1503, Inspections of local confinement facilities are required at least once per year. A copy of the inspection form must be left with the person in charge at the end of the inspection. Some counties like to make appointments to inspect facilities, or they wait until the operator calls prior to their license renewal. It is recommended that environmental health specialists inspect these facilities at random and unannounced to get a true picture of how the facility is maintained and how it functions on a normal basis. If inspection forms are emailed to the operator, verify that they have received the signed copy of the form. Always make sure to have good contact information for the person in charge and the operator of the facility. Under Rule 1504, reinspections can occur at any time to ensure compliance with the rules and to give assistance with rule interpretation. Now let's talk about the inspection form listed under Rule 1505. Here you can see I blew up the top part of the inspection form. The very top portion will have a place for the final demerit score, the date of inspection or change, the status code, the jurisdiction where the facility is located, and the facility ID. The next section has choices for water supply, wastewater system type, capacity of the facility, whether a water sample has been taken, and what type of visit has been conducted, such as an inspection, reinspection, site visit, name change, verification of closure, or status change. Now, since this is one of the older versions of an inspection form that environmental health uses, you'll see terms such as transient non-community and non-transient non-community. A transient non-community water supply is a private water supply that does not regularly serve at least 25 of the same persons for more than 6 months. A non-transient non-community water supply is a private water supply that serves at least 25 of the same persons for more than 6 months. So if you don't understand or don't know what type of water supply is serving the facility, make sure to reach out to your supervisor or the North Carolina Public Water Supply section for assistance. The next section involves the demographical information for the facility, such as the name of the facility, person in charge, and the physical and mailing address of the facility. Next section deals with the classification of the facility based on the demerit scores that are assessed during the inspection. There's 3 different types of classifications: approved, provisional, or disapproved, and we'll talk about those more in depth here in a couple of minutes. So let's talk about grading under 1506. Grading shall be based on Rule .0107 to .0123 of this section. And grades shall be classified as approved, provisional, and disapproved based on the violations noted during the inspection. So what do those different classifications mean? So the first type of classification is the one we're shooting for, which would be approved, which means a demerit score is 20 or less and no 6 demerit point item is violated. Now the next classification is provisional, where any 6 demerit point item is violated, or a demerit score is more than 20 but not more than 40. In either case, provisional classification cannot exceed 7 days. However, in the 1500 rules, a longer period may be established for construction or renovation issues that the facility has to take on. So that's going to have to be looked at on a case-by-case basis. Now, the third and most severe classification is disapproved. That means a demerit score is more than 40, there are conditions found that are dangerous to the inmate's health, or a provisional classification was not corrected within the specified time. So again, when a disapproved classification has been issued, we cannot take permit action in a facility such as a local confinement facility. So therefore, we need to get the licensing agency involved so that they can step in and make sure that the issues that have caused the disapproved classification have been addressed. So let's look at the inspection form a little closer so you can kind of get an idea of how it is laid out and how to use it. So I blew up a small section here just to kind of show you how the items are laid out. So on the far left, you see the item numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, and it goes all the way down to 16. Then you see the heading for each item number. Then you see the requirements that are listed for each item number, so such as floors, easily cleanable and good repair, kept clean, things like that. Then you see the demerit score, demerit point item that is assessed for each requirement. So for floors, easily cleanable and good repair, it would be assessed 1 demerit. And then like under number 3, lighting and ventilation, for equipment being clean and good repair, it would be assessed 4 demerits. So keep in mind, the 6 demerit items are clearly labeled and bolded on the inspection form, so you can see that if you have to assess demerits for a 6 demerit item, that would send that facility into a provisional classification. Just keep that in mind. The next part here is the columns where you add up the item number, the demerits for each item number, and at the bottom you would total each item number as demerit deductions, and that would be placed in the very top of the form as the final score for the facility. And then on the far right-hand side, we've got a place to put our comments for specific things that we observed during the inspection. So let's take a look at an example here. So we see that we've marked items under number 1 and number 2. So for number 1, floors, easily cleanable and good repair, we deducted 1 demerit. And for floors kept clean, we deducted 2 demerits. So you would add those up, and that would be 2 plus 1 would be 3. You would place number 3 on the line. Then number 2 would be walls and ceilings and good, easily cleanable and good repair. We deducted 1 demerit for that. So we place that on the line. And like I said before, you would total all of those up on the very bottom of the form, and that would be what the final score is that you would place at the top of the form. So let's take a look at the comments. So when it comes to the comments, we want to make sure that the comments are clear and specific so that anyone who reads the report, whether that be the person in charge, the licensing agency, a member of the public, or one of your coworkers that may come behind you and do the next inspection, we know exactly what was going on in the facility and what needed to be addressed. So for item number 1, floor repair needed in pod A, and floor cleaning needed in cells of pods A and B. For number 2, ceiling repair needed over shower area in pod D. So we know exactly what violations that were observed during the inspection. The person in charge has a very detailed list of items that need to be corrected, and then those are very well laid out so that you can verify that those have been corrected on the next inspection. So let's talk about what we need to do before we go out to do the inspection. So the first thing we need to be aware of is what is in the file. So if the facility is served by an on-site wastewater system or an on-site water supply, we need to look at that documentation before we go out. Where is the well? Has the well been sampled annually like it's supposed to for bacteria? And we'll talk about that in just a couple minutes. Where are the tanks for the wastewater system? Where is the drain field? What type of system is it? Things like that we need to know before we go out there. And if you have questions about the wastewater system, if you have questions about the well and you're not authorized in those sections, make sure that you reach out to your supervisor or a coworker that is authorized in either wells or on-site wastewater for more information. We also need to look at violations noted on previous inspection reports. What did the inspector find before? What did you find before if you inspected the facility the year before? We need to look and see if we're going to make sure we follow up on items that we found in the last inspection. Are we going to have repeat violations and things like that? Also, we also look at complaints or issues reported about the facility. Sometimes we'll have complaints called in from staff members, family members, the inmates themselves. It just all depends. So if we've had mold in a certain area, if we've had vermin in a certain area, if we've had suspected foodborne illnesses or illnesses from food preparation in the past, those are things that we just need to kind of be aware of. So before we go out on inspection, if we have any questions about those, we can ask the person in charge when we get there. So some basic equipment that you'll need to take with you would be a flashlight, a thermometer with alcohol swabs or other method of sanitizing your thermometer probe, hair restraint if you're going to be in food service areas, an inspection form with your comment addendum in case you have to ask, make some extra notes or you have a lot of things that you need to document, and then a set of rules that you can refer to during and after the inspection. So because this inspection is a little bit different than the other types of facilities that we regulate, I want to mention a couple things to you. First of all, when you get there, it's a good idea to ask the person in charge, are there any communicable diseases? Any inmates have a situation or condition that you need to be aware of so that you don't get exposed to something that is communicable type disease. Another thing to think about too is if the person in charge or the staff member asks you not to take in pens or pencils, cell phones, thermometer probes, things like that can be used as a weapon or things that could be a hazard to you, the inmates, or to the staff member. Make sure you're abiding by those policies and procedures because they're there to keep you safe and for their own safety as well. So keep that in mind if you're going into these facilities. We don't want to create a dangerous situation for you or the person that's walking with you. Another thing too is that if you feel more comfortable maneuvering through the facility using single-use gloves, that's fine. There's nothing that says you can't do that. But just be aware of making sure that you are utilizing proper single glove use. You are washing hands properly because we don't want to contaminate different areas of the facility by not following proper single use glove usage. So keep that in mind as you're going through the facility. So at this point, make sure that you have the inspection form handy so that you can refer to these item numbers as we're going down the list, because we're going to talk about the different item numbers that you would see in the facility and where to mark those. So at this point, try to get your inspection form handy so that you can reference that. So let's first talk about floors under 1507. Floors need to be constructed to be easily cleanable. They need to be kept clean and in good repair. Any areas prone to flooding type cleaning should be non-absorbent, sloped to drain, and provided with floor drains. So typical repair issues you're going to see for flooring would be in cells or cell blocks. You're going to see damaged flooring in bath and shower areas. You may see damaged flooring in the kitchen or auxiliary areas such as storage rooms, laundry rooms, and things like that. So typical cleaning issues you're going to see would be in a lot of the same areas like the cells and the restroom areas. So keep that in mind as you're going through. And any issues that you see with floors under 1507, you would cite under number 1 on the inspection form. So let's talk about walls and ceilings under 1508. Walls and ceilings in all areas are kept clean and in good repair. Walls are easily cleanable, and they are light colored and washable to the highest level of splash. So typical repair issues that you're going to see in the facility are going to be in the bath and shower areas. You're going to see probably some damage in some of the individual cells because a lot of the inmates may cause damage to the walls in those areas. You'll see damage around toilets and in laundry storage areas and around fixtures in the kitchen. So those are some typical areas that you'll see wall and ceiling repairs. In the cells, you may see things thrown up on the ceiling or splattered on the walls and ceiling. So those are just things that you need to address and document as you're going through the facility. Typical cleaning issues you're going to see around toilets and in the shower areas. You may see some floor cleaning under the bunks and the beds and the cells and things like that. So just keep eyes out for stuff like that and document what you see that's out of compliance. Any issues that you see with walls and ceilings under 1508 will be addressed on number 2 on the inspection form. Lighting and ventilation under under Rule 1509. Lighting needs to be adequate and provided in all areas by natural or artificial means. So there's nowhere in the rules that provide a minimum foot candle requirement. So that's why I didn't say anything about having a light meter with you. Just be looking in those areas, make sure that lighting is provided, lighting is clean and in good repair, and that's about all you can do there. But there is no foot candle requirement for lighting in any areas of a local confinement facility. Now that would be different if the kitchen is permitted as a 2600 kitchen, but that would just depend on the facility that you're regulating. Fixtures and equipment need to be clean and in good repair. Now, your ventilation equipment is installed and maintained per the state building code, but things that we're going to be looking for would be dirty ventilation and filters, things like that, broken lights, burnout lights, mold or mildew in poorly ventilated areas. So anything you see like that that relates to lighting and ventilation would be cited under number 3 on the inspection form. So let's move into Rule 1510, which deals with toilet, hand washing, and bathing facilities. So keep in mind that each individual cell would be provided with toilet and hand washing facilities and soap and individual towels. So you just need to verify that those items have been provided in each one of the cells when you go do your inspection. If not, you need to talk to the person in charge about what the issues are there that are preventing that. Each cell block needs to be provided with bathing facilities that are easily cleanable, and all fixtures need to be approved, in good repair, and kept clean. So some typical issues you'll see here will be broken sink faucets, broken toilets, damaged fixtures in the shower area. Typical cleaning issues you're going to see on sinks, toilets, shower curtains, shower stalls, damaged shower stalls, things like that. So just keep an eye out for those things, document anything you see wrong, and that would be documented under number 4 on the inspection form. So continuing on with Rule 1510, which deals with toilet, hand washing, and bathing facilities, kitchen and food prep areas should be provided with convenient toilet facilities with a hand washing sink. That should be close to the food prep and food service areas and kitchen areas. And then in the kitchen area itself, there needs to be a hand washing sink with mixing hot and cold faucets, such as the one you see in the picture on the screen. Adequate hot water supply needs to be provided where needed. Keep in mind that the 1500 rules do not specify a minimum hot water temperature requirement. So in the showers and bathing areas and in restroom in the cells and things like that, just be checking to make sure that hot water is provided in those areas. And these items would be addressed under number 4 on the inspection form. So let's talk about the water supply under Rule 1511. The water supply serving the facility should be public or municipal, or it's going to be an on-site or private supply such as a well. So if it is an on-site supply, it needs to meet the 1700 rules. If you need to know what's required in the 1700 rules, then you can go on the North Carolina Division of Environmental Health website and download those and refer to those. The thing about an on-site supply as well is that there needs to be an annual sample collected for bacteria. Now, if you find that we've tested positive for total coliform or fecal coliform bacteria, you would follow what the requirements are in the 1700 rules for disinfection and testing and things like that. But if we're finding an unsafe water supply or an imminent hazard on the water supply, then we need to be communicating that with the person in charge, the operator of the facility, and the licensing agency, so the licensing agency can step in and make sure that this is getting resolved. Again, hot and cold water need to be piped to points of use. And again, no minimum hot water requirement. We just need to verify that there's hot and cold water in areas where it's needed. These issues would be addressed under number 5 on the inspection form. For drinking water facilities listed under 1512, we're either going to have fountains or individual drinking cups provided, and you see pictures of both of those types of items on the screen. So on the left, you've got a typical drinking cup that you'll see is durable. It should be easy to clean. On the right-hand side, you see a typical setup that you would see in an individual cell. You've got a faucet with hot and cold water, which doubles also as a drinking fountain. You've got a toilet with the flushing button or activator on the far right-hand side at the top. So this is typically what you're going to see. So if they do provide the fountains in the cells, they need to be an approved type, regulated, it needs and cleanable, and kept clean. So if you look at the picture, it looks to be in pretty good shape, looks clean, looks like it's working. The stream of water is clearing the faucet and is also clearing the rim of the sink so that the inmate can effectively get water. If they're using multi-use cups, again, they need to be easily cleanable, and they need to be cleaned and sanitized daily and before use by succeeding persons. So we don't want inmates sharing cups throughout the day. So that is a good question to ask the person in charge is, how are the cups dispensed through the facility? How are they collected, and where are they taken to be cleaned and sanitized? And when you get into the warewashing areas of the facility, then you can double check to make sure that things are being cleaned and sanitized properly. Any issues that you see with drinking water facilities under 1512 would be cited under number 6 on the inspection form. So now let's look at liquid waste under Rule 1513. Liquid waste are going to be disposed of using either a public or municipal disposal system or an on-site wastewater system that is designed and operated in accordance with 1900 rules. If you have a question about an on-site wastewater system and whether it's functioning properly or it is designed properly, reach out to your supervisor or reach out to a person in your office that is authorized in on-site wastewater. Any sewage or other liquid waste needs to be disposed of by an approved method to prevent a public health hazard. We don't want mop water and grease and oils and things dumped out on the ground or dumped into fixtures in the facility that are in an unsanitary manner. So these items need to be dumped into like a mop receptor or a mop area, a can cleaning area, things like that, where it is an approved disposal method. So anything you see with liquid waste under 1513 would be addressed under number 7 on the inspection form. Solid waste under Rule 1514 says that garbage shall be stored in standard containers, properly covered and stored. So you see the picture here. We have a dumpster with its lids. We don't see any leaking or any damage on the unit. We see a little cleaning around the unit, but overall the unit itself looks to be in pretty good shape. Can cleaning facilities shall be provided for cleaning containers, and in the room where that can cleaning facility is should be kept clean. This will be where they can clean their garbage containers and things like that used throughout the facility. And dry rubbish shall be stored in suitable receptacles, properly stored and disposed of, making sure that our garbage is being collected in a timely manner so that we're not accumulating waste on the property for harborages of flies and insects and smells and other nuisances. So any issues that you see pertaining to solid waste under 1514 would be addressed under number 8 on the inspection form. Rule 1515 involves vermin control in premises. Outside openings effectively screened and protected against the entrance of pests. So if we have facilities such as windows and doors, we can use self-closing doors, windows that cannot be opened. If windows are allowed to be open, we need to have 16 mesh or finer screening. We could use other means such as fly fans or any other effective manner that's going to keep pests out of the facility. We need to make sure that we have effective control of rodents, flies, and other pests such as roaches and bed bugs. If pesticides are stored and used on the premises, they need to be approved by the EPA and the NCDA as well. And whoever is applying those pesticides need to make sure that they are properly licensed to do so and they're doing it in an approved manner. We need to keep the premises clean and free of vermin harborages and breeding areas. We don't want issues that are going on the outside of the facility to eventually make their way to the inside of the facility. So any issues that you see with vermin control or premises under 1515 will be cited under number 9 on the inspection form. Rule 1516 deals with storage. We need adequate facilities provided for storage of necessary supplies, equipment, mattresses, and linen. If you see have a facility that's having a problem with storage, because typically it's like a lot of other types of facilities that we inspect, they don't have enough storage and never build these facilities with enough storage. So brainstorm with the person in charge, help them get creative about providing different types of shelving or mobile units, wall-mounted shelving and things like that to help aid them in getting things properly stored throughout the facility. You see a picture of a janitor closet here. We should have a janitor closet with a mop receptor. It should have adequate storage for the janitorial supplies and equipment. You see that we have a place to put our mop bucket. We have a place to store our chemicals. This is a pretty good setup for a janitor closet. And all of these areas, storage areas and janitor areas, need to be kept clean. So any issues you notice with storage under 1516 is addressed under number 10 on the inspection form. So next, let's talk about mattress covers, and bed linen under Rule 1517. Furniture, bunks, mattresses, and furnishings shall be kept clean and in good repair. In the picture, you see a typical bunk bed that you may see. Some of them might have a solid frame to them that you might experience some cleaning issues with. So just when you're in the areas where in the cells and the inmate may be in the cell with you, just make sure that you're cognizant that that is their area, that is their belongings. Make sure to ask their permission to look at their area and be detailed on what you're looking for, that you're simply looking for cleaning issues or repair issues, making sure everything's clean and in good shape, so that they understand what you're there looking for. Again, checking for pillows, blankets, linens, sheets, mattresses, making sure that they're all clean and in good repair. Checking linens, making sure that they are clean, properly stored and handled, not being stored on the floor, stored around where chemicals and garbage and things are being stored. Make sure they're stored in approved areas. And then also making sure that soiled linen is properly handled and stored. So that is a good question to ask the person in charge, is how do the soiled linens make it from the cell blocks to the laundry area? What happens to them when they reach the laundry area? How are they stored and transported? And then how are they handled after they've been cleaned? So that's a really good question to ask the person in charge, is how the linens flow through the facility to make sure that they're being handled properly. Any issues that you see with mattresses, mattress covers, and bed linen under 1517 would be addressed under number 11 on the inspection form. So now let's move into the food service area with food service utensils and equipment, Rule 1518. Equipment shall be easily cleanable and in good repair and kept clean. Food contact surfaces should be accessible for cleaning, non-toxic, and free of open crevices, which makes it harder to keep clean. In a 1500 kitchen that's operated and inspected under the 1500 rules, not all equipment has to be NSF or equivalent, but if they do have NSF or equivalent equipment in their commercial-related equipment, just make sure that it's in clean and in good repair. Keep in mind that the requirements will be different if you got the facility permitted as a 2600 kitchen. If it is operated under 1500 rules, the requirements are going to be a lot different. So, but if you have it permitted under a 2600 permit and you're using the food code, then you would make sure that it meets requirements for the 2600 rules. Any issues that you see with food service utensils and equipment under 1518 would be addressed under number 12 on the inspection form. So let's move into cleaning and sanitizing of utensils and equipment under Rule 1519. Food contact surfaces of equipment and multi-use utensils shall be cleaned and sanitized after use. So you can see over here, we've got our dirty dishes piled up in the dirty side area of the dishwashing area. They're going to make their way through the dishwashing equipment to be cleaned and sanitized. Cooking surfaces need to be cleaned at least daily, so your grills and stoves and ovens and things like that. Utensils and food contact surfaces of equipment used to prepare potentially hazardous foods are cleaned and sanitized prior to each use. So if we are going to, we've got our potentially hazardous foods out to be getting them ready for the next meal service, or we're going to be prepping them. Any cutting boards, utensils, bowls, anything like that need to be cleaned and sanitized prior to that use. And non-food contact surfaces are cleaned as needed. So shelves and cabinets and tops and outside of equipment inside the refrigerators will just need to be cleaned as needed when debris is accumulating. Any issues seen with these requirements would be listed under number 13 on the inspection form. So continuing on in Rule 1519, let's talk specifically about the hand dishwashing facilities. So the hand dishwashing facilities will consist of an approved 3-compartment sink of adequate size and depth for the size and amount of utensils that we are washing, rinsing, and sanitizing. We need hot and cold water for each vat. We need an adequate drain board on each end to accommodate eating and drinking utensils, so one on the dirty side, one on the clean side. If we're using hot water for sanitizing, we need to have a booster heater in the 3rd compartment that is capable of boosting water to at least 170 degrees Fahrenheit. So that will be only required if they're using hot water for sanitizing. If they're using chemicals for sanitizing, then that's not going to be necessary. And then we have adequate space provided for air drying of utensils and equipment. So if you take a look at the picture, we've got our 3-compartment sink. We've got water for each compartment there. We've got clean and dirty side drain board. They're using chemicals for sanitizing, and we have space around and above the sink for air drying. So that's a pretty good setup. So any issues that you see with hand dishwashing facilities would be addressed under number 13 on the inspection form. So some facilities will be large enough to accommodate a dishwashing machine. So if a dishwashing machine is provided, it needs to be sized to handle the number of utensils to be washed. It needs to have an adequate drain board on each end, one on the dirty side and one on the clean side. And on the dirty side, we need a countersunk sink for pre-cleaning of utensils. So look at the picture. We've got a countersunk sink with a sprayer for pre-cleaning dishes on the dirty side, and then they go through the machine to the clean side. So that's pretty good looking setup there. Any issues that you see with dishwashing machines would be cited under number 13 on the inspection form. So continuing on with Rule 1519, a separate sink with drain boards on each end will be required for washing pots and pans and vegetables when necessary. So you see the terminology there, when necessary. So we need to ask more questions if the facility is already in existence, and let's say that they have changed their operation, they've added menu items, we've got a new operator, a new manager in there that's doing different things. We just need to ask questions about, how produce is handled, how pots and pans are washed. If they only have a small 3-compartment sink and they're not capable of using that for washing produce, we need to make sure that we're asking those questions, especially during plan review as well, asking those questions to see if that utensil washing and / vegetable sink, food prep sink is going to be necessary. All cloths used for wiping and cleaning need to be kept clean. Single service items should be used only once, so that would be our plastic cutlery, styrofoam trays, styrofoam cups, things like that. And no poisonous materials should be used to clean eating and drinking utensils such as cyanide. Any issues that you see here would be addressed under number 13 on the inspection form. Rule 1520 deals with the storage and handling of utensils and equipment. Sanitized utensils shall be stored in a clean place. Containers and utensils shall be covered, inverted, and stored in clean cabinets. Some of your older facilities are going to have cabinets versus shelving, so you will just need to look at that on a case-by-case basis to make sure they're being kept clean and in good repair. No contamination of food contact surfaces of equipment is allowed, and single-service utensils should be properly stored and handled. So look at the picture. We've got our multi-use utensils and equipment stored on nice looking shelving. We've got things upside down, and we don't see any contamination or risk for contamination in there. So that's a pretty good looking setup when you're going through and looking at the food service area. So any issues with 1520 would be addressed under number 14 on the inspection form. So let's look at Rule 1521 for food supplies. All food shall come from approved sources, be free of spoilage, and safe for consumption. So again, if food service is being conducted on the premises, we need to be asking the person in charge about where the food is coming from, how the food is being monitored and checked for spoilage, and how things are being rejected if they're not safe for consumption. So just some things that you need to ask the person in charge when you're in the food service area doing that inspection. Grade A pasteurized fluid milk is used for drinking, so that is the type of milk that they need to provide for drinking. Now, dry milk that is reconstituted can be used for cooking and cooking only. So there's a couple of different things there that you need to be aware of if you see milk products in the food service area. Now, some facilities don't do food preparation and service on site. Some don't even have a full-size kitchen on site for use. So therefore, they typically have meals brought in. So if meals are catered in, we need to verify the source that they're coming from. So if they're in your county or in your jurisdiction, checking your records, making sure that you're aware of what they're doing and that they're capable of managing that type of food service. If they're coming from a neighboring jurisdiction, communicate with that jurisdiction to assure that they are approved and that they're operating properly. Single service eating and drinking utensils should be used because facilities typically will not have or use their warewashing equipment, or they don't even have warewashing equipment there for use for multi-use utensils. And we need to verify that procedures for transporting meals are approved by the health department. So keep in mind that it's a really good idea to make sure that we are talking to the person in charge about where the food's coming from, researching to make sure that the food is coming from an approved source and being transported and handled properly. And also, it is highly recommended that you schedule an inspection during a meal service so that you can verify that food is being transported in properly, being handled properly, that you can talk with the caterer or talk with the food service employees on food service to make sure that food's being adequately protected. So just keep that in mind. Don't always go into the facility when meal services aren't taking place, because you might miss some very important issues or violations that are going on in there that might lead to foodborne illness outbreak at some point in time in the future. So any issues that you note with food supplies under 1521 need to be addressed under number 15 on the inspection form. So food protection under Rule 1522, food shall be protected during storage, preparation, display, service, and transportation. So I want to stop for a moment and make sure that everyone understands this before I talk about the next bullet point. So if you have a facility, a food service facility that you are grading using the 1500 rules, keep in mind that there are some different requirements than what are listed in the 2600 rules or in the food code. So if you are grading a food service facility in a local confinement facility that using the 1500 rules, keep in mind that potentially hazardous foods can be held at 45 or below or 140 and above. You cannot enforce food code requirements in a facility that is being graded using the 1500 rules. Now, if you have the facility permitted as a 2600 facility, then of course you're going to use the 2600 rules for construction standards and for food code requirements, and you can enforce those requirements in that facility. But just keep in mind, you need to be aware of how the facility is it's going to be either licensed and inspected under the 1500 rules or permitted using the 2600 rules. So just keep that in mind. Another thing to remember under the 1500 rules is that refrigerated facilities need to be adequate for the amount of food that they're storing there, such as if you look at the picture, we've got an adequate amount of space for the food being stored in that facility, but the rules only require thermometers in refrigerators. So that's why I've got that highlighted on the slide. We can't enforce them to have thermometers in the freezer areas. The thermometers are only required in the refrigerators. So again, just make sure you know what the 1500 rules require and don't require when you're looking at a facility, grading them with the 1500 rules, just to make sure that we are not bleeding over 2600 and food code requirements on these facilities when we don't have the authority to do so. Again, adequate facilities for hot and cold food holding and cold food storage need to be provided. So any issues you see with food protection under 1522, you're going to address with number 15 on the inspection form. Another thing that we need to be concerned with is the differences in the cooking requirements for foods versus from the 1500 rules to the 2600 rules. So I'll give you an example. In the 1500 rules, stuffing, poultry, stuffed meats, pork and pork products shall be cooked thoroughly before serving. There are no temperature requirements. There's no 155, no 150, no 165 for any of those. It just says that the products shall be cooked thoroughly before being served. So again, we want to make sure that we are not enforcing food code and 2600 requirements on a facility that we are grading using the 1500 rules. So the other cooking requirements in the 1500 rules would be 155 and above for ground beef and products containing ground beef, 165 or above for potentially hazardous foods reheated after cooking and cooling, and 140 for initial reheat for foods from regulated manufacturing plants. So that will be our commercially prepared, fully cooked products that are coming into the facility. Also, another very important concept to keep in mind is that the 1500 rules do not specifically require a metal food stem type thermometer for checking temperatures. So that is an educational moment for you to talk with the person in charge or whoever's in charge of food service to say, hey, it's probably very good to have a thermometer that we can check food temperatures with, that we can check the temperatures, the final cook temperatures in the refrigerator. It'd be a wonderful thing to have to ensure that the food is meeting the requirements for hot and cold holding and for cooking. So again, it's not specifically required in the 1500 rules, but use it as an educational moment to try to encourage them to provide one for use in the facility on a regular basis. So any issues that you see for food protection or 1522 is going to be documented under number 15 on the inspection form. Another thing that we need to be concerned about under Rule 1522 is any salads that are being prepared and used in the facility need to be prepared with minimal manual contact, preferably with chilled ingredients and using clean surfaces. So there's nothing in those rules that specifically require them to use single-use gloves or utensils when preparing potentially hazardous salads. So that is another educational moment there to encourage them to use gloves or utensils in order to prevent illnesses that may be associated with bare hand contact with those type of food items. So those requirements just basically are there just because there's been so many illness outbreaks associated with some of the salads in the past to try to prevent as much as we can for having any type of foodborne illness outbreaks from those items. So raw fruits and vegetables are washed before use. Individual portions cannot be served again. So if you look at the picture, you'll see a typical tray that you'll see in the food service area for a local confinement facility. We want to make sure that individual portions are not brought back to the kitchen from one inmate and served to another, and that there are no live animals are allowed in food prep, food storage, or food service areas. Any violations of these items would be noted under number 15 on the inspection form. So let's talk about food service workers under Rule 1523. All food workers need to wear clean outer clothing. They need to wear effective hair restraints when engaged in food preparation and service. They should practice proper hand washing by using an approved hand washing facility, washing their hands prior to starting work, after using the toilet, and as often as necessary to remove soil and contamination. They also are not allowed to use any tobacco products while engaged in food preparation and service. That is going to be addressed under number 16 on the inspection form. Continuing with food service workers, no food service worker can work while sick or with a boil or infected wound. And if a communicable disease is suspected, the person in charge needs to notify the health department immediately. So again, those requirements are going to be addressed under number 16 on the inspection form. So that is the end of this presentation. If you have any questions about this presentation, please contact your regional specialist. Thank you and have a wonderful day.